They said, haha, funny. So I moved every 3 or 4 years to find a truly good friend. From 2005 to 2009, I studied in Anhui Medical University to get my bachelor's degree. Then I went to School of Life Sciences in University of Science and Technology of China to get my doctorate degree. Then I worked at a postdoctoral research station as a postdoctor in Anhui Jianghuai Horticulture Company, which is the organizer of this workshop. Now I am a teacher of School of Horticulture of Anhui Agricultural University. The research work I have been engaged in the past 3 years mainly focused on application of molecular markers in vegetable breeding. I believe that vegetable breeding is as much crucial to nation and people here in your country as in China. We invested much manpower and material resources into vegetable breeding. Chinese vegetable production value has reached over 500 billion yuan 2 years ago. Over 30,000 vegetable germplasmas are reserved in National Clonal Germplasma Repository. So in China, the production, supply, marketing of vegetables is an industry with the largest numbers of employees nationwide. With so many laborers invested into this territory, how many works have been done by them, by so many workers? Only 3 things: selection, hybridization, and production. These are done respectively by breeders, the first one, and the producers of hybrid seeds, the second one, and the producers of vegetables, the last step. To bring a consumer-favored variety of vegetable into market. First, we need vegetable breeders to select a desirable material inbred line. For example, you have to select maternal inbred line which has high productivity, for instance, and then you select a desirable paternal inbred line which has great disease resistance, for instance. And the producers of hybrid seeds, hybrid maternal and paternal line to produce F1 seeds. One of the most critical matters producers need to pay attention to this is that they must ensure seed purity of F1 generation meeting the national standards before the seeds were sold to farmers. At last, procedures of vegetables plant F1 seeds and harvest vegetables, possessing the great quality of both maternal and paternal line. As a seed company, Anhui Jianghuai Horticulture Seed Company focused on the first 2 steps. In the past decades, Like most of other countries' vegetable breeders, we accomplish the first two steps mainly on visual inspection and experiences. First one, selection. Selective breeding. Let's say your goal is to select a pepper variety with increased productivity. When you find a bigger one among ordinary ones in your field, you have to plant seeds of it. And nurture all the seedlings until fruit setting. Then you can select the biggest one and repeat the process. After several generations, then you can get a stable inbred line with high productivity. The phenotype becomes stable in the inbred line. This is a classical breeding method adopted by breeders all over the world for decades. But the greatest advantage of the traditional breeding way is labor consuming and time consuming. You have to plant all the seedlings into field and nurture them until fruit setting. One repeat of the process will cost you at least half a year. And usually it takes 6 times of repetition of the process to get an inbred line. Besides, it's critical to provide uniform growth environment so that genotype of every single seedling can display stably. Otherwise, a plant with high productivity potential would encounter production reduce if it was planted in a sterile area of the field. So it is unstable. This is part one, selective breeding. Second, hybridization. After selection of desirable parental materials, you hybridize them to get F1 seeds. These seeds will grow into plants with advantages of both paternal materials. But during manufacturing of F1 seeds, failure would sometimes happen due to predehiscent of the maternal material's stamen or inactive stamen of the paternal material, which brings seed purity issue to the manufacturers of F1 seeds. And in China, the seed law of People's Republic of China ruled that seed companies will face very heavy punishment if they sell seeds with purity lower than 95%. So seed purity must be checked cautiously for every batch of sales, even though cost of seed purity identification is actually very high. Usually, seed companies would take out at least 200 seeds randomly from a batch of F1 seeds. Plant them into field to inspect their phenotype. Same as the process of the first step selection, it is a labor and time consuming work, and the results are usually unstable for the same reason. So, how can we overcome obstacles in these two steps? One of the answers would be molecular markers. When you are selecting desirable plants, you think that you are selecting phenotype. But actually you are selecting genotype. Because everything about the plant is controlled by genes. And since genes won't change as seedlings grow into mature plants, we can conduct the detection of genes at the seedling stage to inspect which one of them inherit good qualities from parental materials. Then we can give meticulous care to them and get rid of the others. But why do you use markers instead of directly using genes, since everything about plants is controlled by genes? Why do you use markers instead of genes in vegetable breeding? And what are markers? Genetic markers are DNA sequences with known location on a chromosome that can be used to identify genes. The sequences of genes differ greatly with each other, and the locations of genes are unknown. It is an extremely difficult task to locate a gene. For instance, you asked me for guidance to municipal library, which is 10 miles away. The feasible way is told you to take a bus and get down at the 7th bus station. Because bus stations are distributed uniformly in the city, and their locations are known. Similarly, markers are distributed uniformly in the genome, and the locations of markers are known. Using markers to assist selection is called mass. DNA mass has so many advantages. It is more reliable than inspection weights. One major disadvantage of subjective measure is that feelings of people are not the same. Even sunlight can easily affect your evaluation on fluid appearance. On the contrary, mass is much more reliable. Second, mass can overcome the influence problem of environment. Even in the same field, some area is worse than other area, but no matter how environment changes, DNA won't change. Third, you can conduct early selection during seedling stage, saving time and labor. Fourth, improve selection intensity. When the selection becomes very quick, you can increase selection population to get more desirable plants within one generation. Fifth, non-destructive examination and selection. For example, when selecting anti-rice blast phenotype, you have to inoculate bacteria to the plant to accomplish examination. When you finish the selection and get plant strains with good anti-stress phenotype, they already been damaged by pathogens to some extent. With DNA mass, you don't need to inoculate bacteria to plants. So it is non-destructive examination and selection. Since math has overwhelming superiorities over traditional selection, scientists have developed many kinds of markers for math. Yes, math is not a single method. Based on different markers, several kinds of math are developed one after another. Frequently used math include RFLP, ISSR, SSR, AFLP, and SNP, and so on. We need to choose. We need to choose a kind of marker. Considering large-scale application needs, detection of the marker must be easy. We chose SSR. It can be detected very conveniently. You can see here that SSR represents simple sequence repeat. It is a tract of repetitive DNA in which certain DNA motifs ranging in length from 2 to 5 base pairs are repeated, typically 5 to 50 times. And this is a GA repeat example. And there are also other kinds of repeat. For instance, AT, GA, and TC repeats, and ACC, CTC repeats, and GATA and TGCA repeats, and other kinds. Two characters of SSR are that SSR occur at tens of thousands of locations in the genome, and they are notable for their high mutation rate and high diversity in the population. The underlying mechanism of mass with SSR is that different genomes have different SSR lengths. So after PCR amplification and electrophoresis, band positions could reflect polymorphisms among plants. So with only one step of PCR and one step of electrophoresis, it is easy to detect different SSR among different plants. And second, there are many kinds of simple sequence repeat. 2 bases repeat, 4 bases repeat, and so on. Third, even though distributed all over the genome, if markers have no diversity in the population, it is still not a good choice. Because you can't find differences among plants. But SSR have high diversity in the population. So with these 3 advantages, we chose SSR as our weapon to solve the 2 problems we've been dealing with. Selection and hybridization, the first 2 steps. First, we solve the hybridization problem, which is, in other words, how to identify seed purity with high efficiency and low cost. We synthesized 300 pairs of primers that can amplify different SSR loci. You have to test a lot of primers until you find characteristic bands in paternal land and maternal land, respectively. As to the example here, through screening of all the primers into parental materials, we intend to find primers that can detect differences between these two peppers. As you can see here, we find a pair of primers which can amplify the same SSR locus in parental materials. But the lengths of SSR are different between parental and maternal. Black lines represent primers. As you can see, most part of SSR sequence is similar between paternal and maternal. In the lane of F1, so with only one difference here, most part of the sequences are similar with only one difference here, which causes length difference between paternal and maternal. This is the band of paternal and maternal. In the lane of F1, we found two bands representing heredity from both parental materials. Thus, we can identify those true hybridization progenies in a batch of seedlings and calculate the seed purity. Then two tests were done before this method was brought into practical production. The first one is blind test. We asked our co-workers to put several maternal materials into a batch of F1 plants. We extracted DNA and did the SSI detection. These are the results. The electrophoretic A was tested with pepper BF. And asterisks represented maternal plants mixed designedly by our co-workers. We identified them all. And the pound sign here are not maternal plants mixed by co-workers. We speculated that it is a false F1 seed due to hybridization failure. And electrophoretic B was tested with pepper 7318. Again, we screened out all the plants mixed designedly, represented by asterisks. This is a blind test. The second test was comparison between lab and field. We fetched 400 seeds out of one batch of F1 seeds. 200 seedlings were sent to lab, and the rest 200 were planted into field. With pepper BF, seed purity identified by molecular marker method was 97.8%, and the result identified by visual inspection was 99.2%. With pepper TJ2, mass and traditional method gave seed purity of 97.6%. and 98.4% respectively. Later tests on other cultivars also showed a similar tendency that lab result was lower than field result. In other words, if lab reports say that the seed purity is above 95%, then you can sell it with safety. Passing the two tests, we feel confident to continue with large-scale screening of primers. After 9,800 times of screening, we found 149 pairs of primers usable on the top 29 most important pepper varieties in Jianghuai Company, with an average of 5 pairs of primers for each variety. And as to pumpkin, we found 101 pairs of primers usable on the top 17 most important pumpkin varieties in Anhui Jianghuai Seed Company, with an average of 6 pairs of primers for each variety. This is a corresponding table of varieties and primers. The first column is variety name, which is in Chinese, and these are primers, and these are annealing temperature used in PCR. With this table, it seems that we can solve all the problems on seed purity. Then we calculated our productivity. With 2 technicians working for 8 hours, we can accomplish purity identification of 200 plants. Every batch of seeds needs to be checked for at least 200 plants. So our productivity was 1 batch per day. Then we asked our co-workers from sales department how many batches needed to be checked every day to meet requirement of sales. They gave us a number. And we knew there was a long way until we can solve the problem of seed purity. So we started the establishment of high throughput SPI. We analyzed the whole procedure of mass to see where the time limits were. First, 6 hours were needed to extract DNA from seedlings. Then, DNA were used in PCR as templates. It takes nearly 2 hours to run a PCR program. It was clear where the time limits were. So first, we tried to accelerate DNA extraction. A commonly used DNA extraction method was displayed here. Plant materials were subjected to manually grinding or grinding instrument, like this one here. It took at least half an hour to break cell wall in spite of using wedge method. After grinding, powders were subjected to extraction buffer and water bath for 6 60 degrees for 45 minutes to lysis cell membrane. The organic reagent was used to extract DNA from cellular components. At last, high-quality DNA was obtained through centrifuge, washing, and desiccation. As you can see, this method has cumbersome steps. How can we shorten time? The DNA extracted by this method was of high quality, complete, and pure. Complete, first, means DNA fragments were very long, usually longer than 5 kilobases. But do we need so complete? Do we need DNA fragments to be so complete? If you can recall that SSR is a kind of DNA sequence with certain DNA motifs, ranging in length from 2 to 5 bases, repeated typically for 5 to 50 times. And the 5 base pairs repeated for 50 times is 250 BP long, which is very short. So it turns out that we don't need DNA fragment to be so complete. Second, DNA purity was required if downstream experiments were gene clone, thousand blot, and so on. But similarly, do we need DNA to be so pure? We just need to check PCR results and no more else. And PCR is very easy to succeed. So again, with SSR detection, we don't need our DNA fragments to be so pure. These inspired us to abandon commonly used DNA extraction and considered abbreviated extraction, which use alkali boiling to extract and the pH adjusting to acquire DNA that is suitable for DNA PCR reaction. Obviously, this method is time and labor saving. But we failed. When tried with leaves and seeds, we failed in PCR with this abbreviated method. The true reason is unknown. We suspected that phenolic substances and proteins in leaves and seeds impede us to extract DNA with high enough quality that can work as template in PCR reaction. But then, fortunately, it came to us that we could try roots of germinated seeds, whose composition was relatively simple. Due to active division, cell junctions are loose. This time, we succeed. Then, we tested purity identification with roots in quantity. As you can see, roots of germinated seeds of pepper TJ3 adapted alkaline boiling method very well. We identified the 3 false F1 seeds. This one, and this one. out of 94 seeds. So the seed purity of this batch was around 96.8%. And the positive controls also show the clear bands. Germinated seeds of pumpkin N008 gave us successful experiences too. With DNA template extracted from roots and primer CMTM224, we succeeded in 102 PCR reactions. Again, 3/4 F1 seeds, this one, and this one, were identified. Utilizing the abbreviated extraction method, which was composed of two main steps. First, distributing roots into centrifuge tubes and alkaline boiling. Second, transferring DNA one by one into 96-well PCR plate for PCR reaction. We were able to shorten DNA extraction time from 6 hours to 1.5 hours per 200 seeds. After several times of practice, one of our technicians suggested that we can extract DNA directly in the 96-cell well PCR plate. So the final procedure went like this. After adding roots and 80 microliter of alkaline, usually sodium hydroxide, into the well, plates were put in warm baths at 99 degrees for 20 minutes. Then trace chloride was used to adjust the pH. Because PCR reaction will fail if pH of DNA template is too high. Now, supernatant with DNA in it can be transferred to a new plate very conveniently with multi-channel pipette. This little adjustment shortened extraction time further to less than 1 hour per 200 seeds. Now, PCR became the only time limit. We surveyed the whole process of PCR reaction. The total volume of a PCR is 20 microliter, composing of PCR buffer, DNTP, and polymerase, which can be bought from Reagents Corporation. And then primer. Primers were designed by yourself and synthesized by a company. DNA was extracted from plants. Then PCR plate containing these was put into a PCR amplifier to go through this program. At a very high temperature, like 94 degrees, template DNA degenerate into 2 single strands. Then at a lower temperature, like 55 degrees, primers bind to DNA fragment. When temperature rises to 72 degrees, polymerase synthesizes another chain of the fragment. And then after 35 circles, Original SSR fragments will be amplified to a huge magnitude that can be detected through electrophoresis. This is a time-consuming process, making the whole PCR program costs 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is too long for us. We asked for advices to solve this problem. And our instrument supplier suggested that we could use a PCR amplifier named Speeder. One of the main reasons that PCR programs take such a long time is temperature changing from 94 degrees to 55 degrees and then to 72 degrees. Speeder can save your time by accelerating temperature changing rate because the temperature control module, this one, the temperature control module of it was made by gold, metal with the highest thermal conductivity in the world. And indeed, the effect was quite remarkable. It could double PCR speed. However, the drawback was price, roughly 4 times of our ordinary PCR amplifier. And that's why our instrument supplier suggested that we could try this way. Besides, it used a special kind of 96 wear plate, which was also expensive than ordinary ones. To solve this problem, we have to figure out other ways. So we went back to the program. We surveyed the program again to find the reducible parameters. You can reduce circle number, 35 circles. You can reduce this number because you have to amplify SSR fragments to 2 to the power of 35 to visualize them. If the circle number was reduced to 30, electrophoresis detection would fail. Thus, it seems that the time in every circle, 40 seconds, 40 seconds, and 40 seconds. The time in every circle is the only option that we can reduce. We tried reduction of 1 bath time. And as you can see, these are results from standard PCR program. You can see that without a pre-denature step, the PCR also succeeded. We made a series of reduction tests, realizing that time parameters were all reducible actually. Finally, we were surprised to find out that 0 minute, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 0 minute program would also give us a good electrophoretic. So now we have adjusted the standard program from this form, which costs us an hour and 45 minutes, to this new form, which costs our 24 minutes. This means that we have raised the PCR speed as much as 4 times without buying expensive amplifier. A side effect of speeding up was that bands become darker. To increase PCR quality, we screened PCR reagents, this one, these PCR reagents from several companies, and finally chose one of them. It had the best performance under the adjusted program, shortened time setting. Then we conducted large quantity tests with both pepper and pumpkin. Upper is the electrophoregram from standard program. Lower is the one from adjusted program. With shortened warm bath time, bands become darker, but it was still clear enough to identify single band. Like this one, single band from double bands. And positive controls worked too. Things were a little different as to pumpkin. When the program was adjusted to 0 minute, 1 second, 1 second, 5 seconds, 0 minute, bands were too obscure to be inspected. So we ascertained 0 minute, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, and 5 seconds, 0 minute to be the final setting. Under this adjusted program, differences between single band, like this one, and the double bands were distinctive enough. And the positive controls worked too. Now we have solved the final time limit in the whole procedure. A high throughput seed purity identification method was adjusted. Brief summary. For the past decades, we've been using traditional methods to calculate seed purity, which was time-consuming, and it requires experiences on phenotypes of varieties. It usually takes an amateur 3 years at least to be familiar with the physical characteristics of all varieties. And phenotype of plants can be easily affected by soil, sun, rain, wind, and temperature. Thus, the traditional inspection method is unstable. On the contrary, marker-assisted selection way can save a lot of time, especially when the high throughput identification system was established. We speeded up the whole procedure for 15 times. And second, it is easy to learn. It only takes an amateur 2 days at most to learn all the operations. And you don't need to be familiar with characteristics of any varieties. All you need is the ability to distinguish single band from double band. And third, DNA won't be changed by environment. Thus, marker-assisted selection is a stable and efficient method. Among all kinds of markers, we chose simple sequence repeat and synthesized 300 pairs of primers. Through screening, all of the varieties had at least one pair of usable primers. This variety primer table was just a foundation. To bring this method into production line, we have to reduce time cost. By utilizing optimized DNA extraction and adjusted PCR program, we shortened total process time dramatically. Now we can cope with 15 batches per day. Before the high throughput system was established, the speed was one batch only per day. In China, 4 months from September to January are selling season, which are also the busiest season for molecular lab in Anhui Jianghuan Company. Last year, within 4 months from September to January, purity of 1,500 batches of seeds were identified by only 4 technicians. So that's the first part I'm going to share today. Can we have a break now? Coffee break.
Coffee break is not ready yet. Let me find out.
Con permiso, ya el café está disponible, se puede pasar.
No desayuno para poder señor el café.
Ya. But I can yeah, sometimes I think that if you want to develop technology, something for a company, I think it's good to have a master student because the master he can develop the topic and then you later see a good potential, so you can later work with you, and that way it's like a win-win situation.